Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and thank you for tuning in. You're what makes this whole shindig possible. So I'm going to do a video today based off of a question in the comments of what to do in 3D while occupying your state of wish fulfilled in a fourth dimensional reality. And just to recap, a third dimensional reality is your physicalized world. So when you close your eyes and you go internal and you imagine a purple triangle in your mind, that's a fourth dimensional reality. Reality is all the same reality, but we break it into dimensions so that we can focus in certain aspects of it, right? So if you have reality, what reality does is it goes from subtle to gross. So a lot of times when people are talking about they want their manifestation, they want the gross version of it. What does subtle to gross mean? Subtle, from an energetic standpoint, would be like water or air, right? It's more subtle, it's very light, it's very malleable, it's very etheric. When you go to gross, it's hardened, it's crystallized, it's fixed, right? So reality goes from subtle states to gross states. So oftentimes what you're doing is you are crystallizing subtle states into gross states. So when you assume, right? So let's take this from a law of assumption standpoint. If you assume that something is a certain way, whilst your 3D denies it, what do you do in the 3D while you're quote unquote waiting for that assumption to harden into fact? Well, it's a tricky question because you have to look at everything as right now. So when you have a third dimensional reality, your third dimensional reality, the current one that you have right now, is a byproduct of the thoughts, states, beliefs, mental imagery, and emotions that you've been holding on and cultivating. They've essentially expressed themselves into your third dimensional reality, right? How does that happen? Well, you can look at it from a law of attraction standpoint as well. You maintain what is called a dominant frequency. That's your quote unquote vibe, right? So how do you know somebody versus somebody else? Well, they have their own energy, right? I can close my eyes, and if my brother walked in the room and my mom walked in the room, I could pick up the energy signature of both those people and tell you without opening my eyes which one is which, just based off of how they feel, right? So you emit what is called a unique energetic signature, right? That's what makes you individual. That unique individualized energetic signature is essentially a frequency that goes out and pulls law of attraction to bring you things that are in alignment with that type of frequency. So we program and we change and we cultivate that frequency through things like inner dialogue, through mental movies, through present moment awareness of temporary or permanent states of consciousness. This is a really good one to reiterate on. Permanent states of consciousness were all once temporary states of consciousness, meaning that if you felt fearful or you felt scared all the time and then the cop pulled you over and you got a parking ticket and you're like, oh no, that cop pulling you over didn't cultivate that fear. That chronic state within you was caused by some level of anxiety or some level of off-puttingness, and then it was in alignment with that type of experience, right? So whenever you have an internal type of frequency, law of attraction is going to bring you things that are in alignment with that type of energy. So it's much more pertinent to control that inner frequency, that inner type of vibrational output, because that's with you all day, every day. And that's really what the third dimensional reality is responding to, right? The universe at large, in terms of people, places, and circumstances, is going to be calibrated to that frequency that you emit. So when you look at this channel, right, the difference between this channel and a business channel, right, is a business channel will be like, go do this, go do that, go do this, go do that, and then do all these different things to get this result, right, which is a totally fair way to operate. This channel will teach you how to change that internal frequency, because no matter where you go, that energy, that state of consciousness is going to be reflected back to you in reality. And if you can really customize and really dial in that frequency, it gives you near unlimited creative control over your circumstances, because that frequency is unique to you, right? So you want law of attraction to react to you personally based on what you want, right? You don't want to be using other people's conditional belief systems. You don't want to be using different things that you need to have in order before you can get permission to embody a state, right? You want to be in total, full, dominant, operational control of your reality. And that begins with understanding some basic metaphysics. And metaphysics are just the physics of the unseen world versus physics, which are the seen physics of things like gravity, which is also actually metaphysics. You ever seen gravity? No, you just see its result, right? So that's a perfect example. You have unseen forces that manipulate real physicalized forces. Gravity pulls objects towards the center of the earth, right? But you don't see gravity, but you know it's there if you jump off of a balcony. So when you start to work on a metaphysical level, what you're doing specifically within the realm of metaphysics, if you call oncology or whichever dimension you want to look at, you're looking at things like knowingness, belief, and thoughts and how they influence external reality. And when we look at that, we want to understand that the external reality is essentially an effect. When we look at the root of all causation, you can even take this back into biblical scripture. Because biblical scripture, the whole point of Old Testament, New Testament, is essentially killing off all of these things that people think are gods and going back to one God. What is one God? One God is the I amness. One God is the I amness, the awareness of being. There is only I am. There is only awareness of being. So once you understand that who you're being, who you're identifying as, how you're thinking, how you're feeling, what permanent and temporary states of consciousness you're dwelling within are expressing themselves externally, it's much more like you have a controller to a video game, and now you can play the video game because you can manipulate all of these things internally without having to go external to change these circumstances. Without the understanding of the control scheme, you have to go externally. But the issue that everybody runs into, and this is what creates what I would call a hell realm, is whenever you go and try to fix something without reorganizing or recalibrating that internal state of consciousness to be what you want, you're just working in the world of effects and everything falls apart and crumbles because you don't have the source of creation at your disposal. You don't have the cause of reality under your control. So every time you try to do things, it's like, you know, the bowl breaks into 1,000 pieces and you're trying to glue all the fucking pieces back together, right? And that's how most people live their life. They see what has already been created and they try to Frankenstein the shit into something that is what they want. You want to go straight to the source of creation. And in order to understand how to operate in 3D whilst maintaining your focus on having your internal frequency in alignment, is you decrease the importance massively of what's around you because it's a world of effect. It's not a world of cause. The only reason that you worry about what's going on in 3D is because it's still influencing you, right? If something in the 3D is programming you how to feel, how to think, and how to identify, that thing has power over you, right? So the first thing that you do is you take its power away. You flip it, right? Go back to the cop car experience, right? If I'm in a state of nervousness, negative anticipation, and then somebody pulls me over, I have to understand that the getting pulled over was an effect of the state, right? So that causation made that event happen to me. And the thing that's really good about that is understanding that when I take personal responsibility for the state that creates these effects, it's not about me going on some sob story and being like, I'm such a piece of trash. I created all these problems. First off, you're unconscious. So when you're unconscious, you always fall into crazy states. Part of the fun of being alive, right? But once you wake up, now you can consciously embody these states and understand that whatever effects were caused by these states, you can now remove yourself and they will also dissipate. So the 3D, you want to decrease that type of importance because with giving it any power over you, you create a god out of that thing, right? If you look at your bank account and you go, oh shit, I'm poor because of this number, that thing has told you what you are, you've accepted it, and now you're identifying as a person who doesn't have any money and you're fucked because that thing now controls you. And without the understanding that that is just an effect of your state, Now you have to fucking fix that thing before you can feel like you have the thing, but that thing will never get fixed because that thing is caused by the way your state of consciousness is arranged internally. So it's all backwards. You're playing it backwards and you'll loop yourself into madness. So what happens is you start to decrease the importance of physical reality. You go through the day-to-day and you assume that every single thing that is happening is working out in your favor, right? So you could take this to a reality transurfing type of level, right? If I have a goal to have a car, right, and I'm holding this feeling state of having the car, I'm doing mental rehearsals of driving that car. Every night before I go to bed, I'm seeing the car in my driveway, I'm touching it, I'm feeling the cold steel of it, I'm seeing myself sign the papers to the car, I'm seeing how it fits in my driveway, right? I am owning and going into and thinking from the state of having that car. I'm saturating my consciousness and my subconscious mind with having that car. But then I wake up and the car's not there. What do? Well, you have one of two things. You can immediately shift your consciousness back to a state of unfulfillment and go, fuck, it didn't work. The car's not there. It's all bullshit. I'm going to freak out. Or you can go, oh, this is great. I've saturated my consciousness. The reason the car is not there physically is because I have had a calibrated frequency of not having this car for 5 fucking years or more, right? I've had a state of not, first of all, it might have just been I didn't even want the car, right? So it's not like a judgment thing, but I just have had a state of where I have not been identified as a person who has this car. So when I start to do this, the 3D, to bring it full circle, is a gross state that is produced by a subtle state, meaning that a subtle state is my fourth dimensional reality. So when I persist in a fourth dimensional reality, what I'm doing is I'm basically energizing that state with enough energy to physicalize and become quote unquote real in a third dimensional reality. So when I'm doing this inner work, the external world is an effect, meaning that causes always come before effects. Everything external is secondary and tertiary to my primary focus, which is an internal fourth dimensional realm. So once I start to really saturate my mind, my job, and many videos say, ignore the 3D, decrease importance, assign it always as good meaning, as just, oh, this is the perfect unfolding. Because 3D has to unfold, right? That's why we don't mess with the middle in manifestations. You always go to the end because reality, that subconscious larger part of your being, has ways in which you don't know how to bring things into existence. When I visualize my car in the driveway, right, I'm holding that frame, I'm holding that feeling state, I'm making that feeling state from a temporary feeling state into a permanent feeling state. I'm layering on mental movies, I'm doing all these things, I'm persisting in the wish fulfilled. One of the 12 aspects of mind is to persist in a fourth dimensional reality until it physicalizes exactly the way you want it to. That is a disciplinary aspect of your mind that has to be disciplined to where you don't lose faith in your imaginal acts and you reliably and consistently create enough things internal that become third dimensionally physicalized that now you have proof that an understanding of how the law consistently works, and you're less concerned with whether or not it's going to work. You're more concerned with whether or not you have fully saturated and normalized that feeling, aka turned that state that you've temporarily occupied over and over again into a normal state for you, meaning that that state is now not a temporary state but a permanent state of consciousness. Whereas your permanent state of consciousness was unfulfilled, now your permanent state of consciousness is fulfilled, it's normalized, you feel like the car's there, even though it may not have popped into your 3D, but you operate in the 3D with the understanding that the 3D is an effect of your internal world that takes a little bit of time to crystallize. Everything has a quote-unquote birthing period. I don't buy into the fact that you can't control the time frame. I think you have to first sell yourself that everything works from this law-based standpoint, and then you can construct a reality in which you get things fast, efficient, and in a way that is pleasing to you. But you have to have total faith in the law working and actually affecting the third dimensional reality before you're able to first understand that the law works, and secondly, understand how, if you give the third dimensional reality any power, it will influence your state, and the state is the creator of those manifestations, and it will block you. So long story short, decrease importance in the third dimensional reality. Realize that it was all just a byproduct of your previous states that you've been occupying, the previous thoughts. So it's always changing, not a big deal. Anything that you created can be uncreated easier than you created it. And isn't that a great thing to know? Because fuck all of these unwanted circumstances. We're going to fix them all, right? So don't worry about it. The only thing that will keep that circumstance there is an emotional reaction, because an emotional reaction is you re-entering the state of it not being the way you wanted it to be, right? So if you re-enter the state, you go through another cycle. You re-enter the state, you go through another cycle. If you don't want to go through the cycle, become indifferent. Find what you want, become emotionally involved in the wanted state exclusively. Everything else doesn't fucking matter. It's all stardust. Doesn't fucking matter. This is what I want. This is who I am. This is what I want. This is who I am. This is what I have. This is what I want. This is who I am. This is what I have. You just keep looping that shit over and over and over again until it feels normalized. So I hope this was a good answer. I appreciate you guys leaving comments with video suggestions that you like. If you guys have any more videos that you would like made, leave them in the comments. I have coaching with the link tree for videos, emails, and text as well. So check that out if you want to shift something specific. And other than that, the most important thing that I'm going to say today is go conquer. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.